The strange signal had first been detected just over a month ago. At first, it seemed like an anomaly, just another interference in the vast expanse of space. But when it persisted and grew stronger over the following weeks, the situation changed. Governments worldwide scrambled to analyze the signal, but all attempts to decode it failed. It wasn't encoded in any known language or pattern. There were no pulses, no radio waves, just a steady, almost soothing hum, a call to attention. As the signal continued, it began to play on the minds of Earth's leaders. Why was this message coming now, and why from a place so far beyond known space? Some theorized it was a message from another civilization, while others feared it was a trap, one that had been waiting for millennia. Soon, the debate turned from scientific curiosity to political urgency. Was this a moment of opportunity or an impending threat? The United Nations, along with world governments, called for an emergency summit. Leaders from every corner of Earth converged in Geneva to discuss the implications of the silent path. As they gathered, the urgency in the air was palpable. Every nation, from the superpowers to the smallest states, understood that the course of human history might change forever in the coming weeks. In the grand conference room, the air was thick with tension. At the head of the table sat three figures, chosen to represent the collective will of humanity. General Erica Thornton, a decorated war hero who had seen the depths of human conflict and emerged as a tactical genius. Dr. Rajiv Patel, a brilliant astrophysicist who had spent his life studying the mysteries of the universe, and Ambassador Isabella Cho, a seasoned diplomat known for her ability to bring together opposing factions. Together, they were tasked with leading humanity's first journey into the unknown. General Thornton was the first to speak, her voice steady but carrying the weight of her reputation. "We can't afford to wait any longer," she said. "We need to act. We send a team to investigate. This could be humanity's greatest opportunity or our greatest threat." Ambassador Cho nodded, her mind already working through the political ramifications. "I agree, but we must approach this carefully. Any action we take will send a message to the rest of the world. We need to ensure global unity. Any signs of aggression or fear will only worsen the situation." Dr. Patel, who had been quietly observing, leaned forward. "But we don't have the luxury of time. This signal is unlike anything we've seen before. It's persistent. There's something more to it. If we don't investigate now, it could be gone forever. We're dealing with something far more advanced than anything we've encountered." The three leaders locked eyes. Their paths were set. The Council's decision was unanimous. A mission must be launched to explore the silent path, whatever the cost. They agreed on the team. General Thornton's tactical expertise would guide them. Dr. Patel's knowledge of space and technology would provide the scientific insight, and Ambassador Cho's diplomatic skill would ensure cooperation with the various spacefaring nations of Earth. As the summit concluded, the leaders stood, their minds already consumed by the enormity of the task ahead. The mission would be their test, not just of their leadership, but of humanity's place in the cosmos. Would they find a new ally, a forgotten race, or something far darker waiting in the silent path? The unknown stretched out before them, an invitation they couldn't refuse. In the days that followed, Earth's first interstellar expedition was assembled. A sleek, advanced vessel, the Odyssey, was outfitted with cutting-edge technology capable of traversing the deep void. It was humanity's first real step into the unknown, a chance to prove that, even in the face of unimaginable mystery, Earth's leaders would rise to the challenge. As the Odyssey prepared to launch, General Thornton stood at the helm, gazing out into the stars. "We're about to take the first step into the dark," she said quietly. "Let's hope we find the light on the other side." With the engines primed and the countdown beginning, Ambassador Cho turned to her colleagues. "Whatever happens, we do this together. Earth stands behind us." The stars ahead beckoned, silent, but full of promise. The Odyssey's engines hummed to life, sending a low vibration through the ship's frame. General Thornton, standing at the command center, exchanged a final glance with Ambassador Cho and Dr. Patel. The moment they had all been waiting for was finally here. They were about to journey into the silent path. The ship's trajectory was plotted, an intricate path through uncharted space, taking them to the edge of known existence. For the crew aboard, it was not just an expedition, it was a pilgrimage into the unknown. As the ship broke free from Earth's atmosphere, the blue planet shrank into a distant orb, a fragile marble spinning silently in the vastness of space. Dr. Patel, seated in the science bay, studied the data streaming across his console. He had spent countless hours preparing for this mission, but now, as they crossed into the dark expanse, a growing sense of unease settled over him. The readings were strange, shifting. "We're approaching the silent path," he murmured under his breath, "and it's already changing us." Ambassador Cho stood at a window, her eyes scanning the black void ahead. "You're sure we won't lose communication?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with concern. The silent path was notorious for its ability to block all forms of signal. Any attempt to send a message back to Earth was likely to fail once they crossed its threshold. "We're already cut off," Dr. Patel replied. "No contact will be possible until we leave, if we leave." The ship hummed with an eerie quiet as the crew entered the heart of the silent path. The stars around them seemed to disappear, swallowed by the vast nothingness. They were alone in the deepest of voids, a realm where light itself seemed reluctant to exist. Hours passed without incident, but then came the first anomaly. Without warning, the Odyssey lurched, throwing everyone off balance. The ship's navigation systems blinked wildly as alarms rang out. "What the hell was that?" General Thornton barked, grabbing the nearest handrail. Dr. Patel, who was monitoring the ship's systems, was already frantically inputting commands. "Gravitational anomaly, we're being pulled off course. I can't stabilize the ship." Ambassador Cho, trying to remain calm, quickly reviewed the instruments. "Can we reverse course? Is there any way to get back to normal space?" "We can't." Dr. Patel's voice was sharp with frustration. "This force, it's not just gravitational. It's like the laws of physics are breaking down around us. I'm detecting fluctuations in spacetime itself. We need to ride it out." The ship was being pulled deeper into the heart of the silent path, its trajectory now completely out of their hands. The crew braced for impact as they approached the center of the anomaly, where the pull grew stronger, distorting their perception of time and space. A deep, resounding hum filled the ship. It wasn't coming from their engines. It wasn't mechanical. The sound was alien. As the crew looked around, they realized the hum was penetrating their very minds, reverberating in their skulls. "Is anyone else hearing that?" Ambassador Cho whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's not just you," General Thornton replied, her face pale. "Whatever it is, it's getting louder." The hum intensified, growing into a steady rhythm. The walls of the Odyssey seemed to flicker and shimmer, as though they were slipping in and out of phase with reality. Dr. Patel's fingers flew across his console, trying to make sense of the data, but it was all so chaotic. "We're being pulled into something alive. I don't know how to explain it, but this isn't a natural phenomenon. It's intelligent." The hum reached a crescendo, then stopped. The ship was still, suspended in a void that seemed to stretch on forever. The crew stared at their instruments, but now the data had stopped fluctuating. The anomaly had stabilized. They were no longer being pulled, but they were nowhere near where they had been. They had entered the silent path, but this was something far beyond any of them. A sudden voice crackled through the comm system, distorted and mechanical. "Welcome, travelers." The crew froze. The voice wasn't human. It wasn't even a language they recognized. And yet the message was clear. They were not alone. General Thornton turned to the crew, her expression hardening. "Prepare yourselves. This is only the beginning." As the Odyssey floated silently, the crew realized they had crossed a line. They were no longer just explorers. They were trespassers entering a realm governed by unknown forces. The voice reverberated through the Odyssey's comm system, its distortion thick with alien technology. It wasn't just a sound, but a presence, an unspoken weight that filled every corner of the ship. "Welcome, travelers," the voice repeated, its tone devoid of warmth, yet not threatening. It was as if they were being observed, studied by something far beyond their comprehension. For a long moment, the crew stood in stunned silence. The voice had not come from any known source on the ship. No radio transmission, no speaker, no communications link. It was just there, in their heads, unmistakably real. General Thornton's hand clenched into a fist. "What the hell was that? And where are we?" she demanded, her voice sharp but calm. "We've entered something, some sort of field," Dr. Patel replied, his voice trembling slightly as he stared at the flickering data on his console. "I'm getting strange readings. Our location, it's shifting. Time is distorting here, I think. We might not be in normal space anymore. Or maybe we are, but it's been twisted." Ambassador Cho's face was unreadable as she walked over to the comm station, her eyes scanning the screens. "Is there any way to track the source of the signal? Can we respond?" "I don't know how," Dr. Patel admitted, shaking his head. "This isn't like any transmission I've encountered. It's not coming from a ship or a station. It's coming from something else, something older." The hum returned, but this time it wasn't just a sound. It was a presence in the room, an invisible force that seemed to grow heavier with each passing second. The walls of the Odyssey shimmered again, the faint outlines of structures outside becoming visible. Long-forgotten cityscapes appeared and vanished, flickering like a broken hologram. Some were impossibly vast, others too distorted to comprehend. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Patel murmured. "It's like we're passing through a different layer of reality, a space where time and matter are malleable." Another pulse of the hum echoed through the ship, this time accompanied by a series of soft clicks, metal on metal, almost like a door unlocking. A section of the wall near the observation deck flickered, revealing a strange, ethereal structure floating just beyond the ship. It wasn't like anything built by humanity or any known civilization. Towering spires seemed to reach toward an unseen sky, their surfaces glistening with a soft, glowing light. There were no markings, no insignia, just silent, incomprehensible grandeur. "The Watchers," a voice suddenly said from the comms, clear and distinct, but still strangely alien. It was the same voice, but this time it sounded less like a message and more like a command. "You are in our domain now." The crew's heart skipped. The Watchers? What were they talking about? Ambassador Cho spoke carefully, her diplomatic training kicking in. "We don't want to intrude. We've come to learn, to understand." The voice didn't respond immediately. Instead, the hum grew louder, almost imperceptible in its pressure. And then, a new sound filled the Odyssey speakers. A low, vibrating frequency, not unlike a heartbeat, steady, slow, and powerful. "We observe," the voice finally responded. "You are the first to come. The first to pass through the silent path. The first to be seen by the Watchers. You are not alone, but you are in our care." General Thornton's grip on her console tightened. "We didn't come here to be watched. We came to explore, to understand." "You came," the voice responded, "because the silent path called you. And now you will learn." A sudden surge of energy coursed through the Odyssey, the ship vibrating as if the very fabric of space itself was being tugged. The crew scrambled to secure themselves as the ship lurched again, though this time there was no gravitational anomaly, no crushing force, just a shift, a transition. For a split second, everything outside the windows turned black, utterly black. Then, in a heartbeat, it faded, revealing a new expanse, a vast alien space where distant stars hung suspended like jewels. But now, something was different. The stars, bright and numerous, seemed to pulse, each one radiating a unique signature of light. No star looked the same. They glowed in every color imaginable, from icy blues to deep, fiery reds. "We are here," the voice said simply. "You may observe, you may learn, but you will not leave until we have decided." The Odyssey was now surrounded by this alien cosmic sea, too vast, too strange to comprehend. The crew stared at the scene before them, their mission now overshadowed by a terrifying truth. They were no longer in control. They had become part of something larger, something that might never let them go. "Prepare yourselves," General Thornton said quietly. "We have no idea what we're dealing with." But in that moment, they all knew one thing for certain. They were no longer mere explorers. They were now pawns in a game that had been unfolding for millennia. And they would soon learn whether the Watchers were protectors or predators. The Odyssey drifted in the alien expanse, surrounded by the luminous, pulsing stars. It felt as if the universe itself was watching them. No longer were they traveling through the cold, indifferent void of space. They were within something alive, something ancient. The eerie silence, broken only by the occasional hum, pressed in on them. The crew could feel the weight of it, a sense of being judged. General Thornton paced back and forth across the command deck, her brow furrowed. "We need to understand what they want from us," she said, her voice low but firm. "We can't just sit here and wait for answers." Ambassador Cho stood by a window, staring out at the mesmerizing stars. "The Watchers are testing us, I think," she said thoughtfully. "This isn't just about exploration. They want something more. They want to see if we're worthy of something." Dr. Patel's eyes flicked nervously to the screens around him. "I don't know about worthy, but I'm getting more data. It's like we're being probed. They're learning about us." "Learning about us?" General Thornton snapped, her eyes sharp with suspicion. "How?" "There's a pattern in the data, something biological, something psychic," Dr. Patel explained, his voice distant as he analyzed the information. "It's as if they're accessing our minds, our emotions, our thoughts, and it's happening to all of us." The crew fell silent, the weight of Patel's words sinking in. The Watchers were not just observing them physically. They were probing deeper, testing their very essence. Their thoughts, fears, desires, the Watchers were privy to all of it. "We need to prepare," Thornton said, her voice resolute. "Whatever they're doing, whatever they want, we need to face it head on." Before anyone could respond, the ship suddenly lurched again. This time, however, it wasn't the same gravitational disturbance. The Odyssey seemed to vibrate with a strange resonance, an internal frequency that rattled the crew's bones. Lights flickered, instruments flickered, everything around them seemed to distort. And then silence. The hum had stopped. The stars outside blinked out one by one, leaving nothing but an oppressive darkness. Even the faint glow of the mysterious structures surrounding them had vanished, swallowed by the void. The crew felt the shift in the atmosphere, a tension in the air that was almost palpable. The voice returned, but this time, it was softer, more direct, almost intimate. "You're here because you have entered the silent path. But now, you must prove yourselves." General Thornton's eyes narrowed. "Prove ourselves? How?" "You must endure," the voice replied, its tone devoid of malice, but still cold. "You will be tested on your minds, your hearts, your will. If you succeed, you will earn the right to leave. If you fail, you will be lost." Ambassador Cho's heart raced, her breath shallow. Tested in what way? The voice did not answer immediately, and for a moment, the ship was eerily still. The crew looked at one another, unsure of what was coming next. Then the room around them seemed to warp again. The walls stretched, and the floor shifted beneath their feet. In an instant, they found themselves no longer on the ship, but standing on a vast, empty plain. The sky above them was dark, but starless, unlike the stars they had seen before. It was an expanse of inky blackness, suffocating in its emptiness. "This is your trial," the voice said, now echoing all around them. "You must face your deepest fear. Only by confronting it can you prove your worth." The ground beneath their feet trembled as projections of their worst nightmares began to manifest before them. For General Thornton, it was the image of Earth, burning, consumed by war, its cities reduced to ashes. The haunting screams of humanity echoed in her ears. For Ambassador Cho, the visions were subtler but no less harrowing. The faces of those she had failed in her diplomatic career, the nations she couldn't unite, the peace she couldn't achieve. A heavy weight of guilt settled over her chest as she watched. For Dr. Patel, it was a stark vision of his own mind breaking apart, his thoughts splintering, his ability to reason slipping away as he fell into an abyss of madness. Each member of the crew saw something different, but all were confronted with their deepest fears, their vulnerabilities laid bare before the silent watchers. "We're watching," the voice murmured softly. "Prove your strength. Show us your resolve." The crew was no longer just voyaging through the silent path. They had entered a realm of trial and transformation. Each one of them had to confront what they feared most, knowing that their futures, perhaps their very survival, depended on whether they could overcome it. General Thornton clenched her fists, her eyes steely with determination. "I will not fail. Not here. Not now." As the vision of Earth's destruction intensified, she steeled herself for the test ahead. But she knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. The true challenge had yet to come. The plains stretched endlessly before them, their oppressive darkness broken only by the eerie flickering of their personal nightmares. Each member of the crew struggled, eyes locked on the terrifying visions that seemed to swirl around them, trying to consume their thoughts, their will. General Thornton's heart pounded as the image of Earth's destruction seemed to grow sharper, more vivid. She could feel the heat of the fires licking at her skin, hear the shattering of glass and the wails of the dying. It was as if she was there in the midst of the chaos. Her own hands, once confident in battle, now trembled with helplessness as she watched her planet burn. "No," she muttered under her breath, shaking her head, trying to dispel the vision. "This is not real." But the burning city refused to fade. The screams became louder. The flames grew taller. It was a hellish reality, one she couldn't escape. The voice came again, but this time it sounded almost mocking. "Do you still think you can protect them, General? You couldn't even save your own world." Thornton grit her teeth, fists clenched, but it was difficult to think clearly. The fear, the guilt, was suffocating. Her knees buckled, and she almost collapsed under the weight of it. But then, in the darkest corner of her mind, something clicked. "I am not powerless." The thought was simple, but it was a lifeline. The image wavered. Thornton straightened, her body stiffening with renewed resolve. "I will protect Earth," she said aloud, her voice firm despite the fear gripping her heart. "I will not let you win." The vision of the burning city flickered, faltering in the face of her willpower. Slowly, it began to dissipate, replaced by the quiet of the dark plain once more. In the same moment, Ambassador Cho's gaze was locked on the faces of those she had failed. She could see them clearly now, leaders, diplomats, citizens who had placed their hopes in her and her promises. Their faces were disappointed, accusing. Their eyes bore into her soul, whispering, "You couldn't unite us. You failed us." "Stop," Cho whispered, her breath ragged as guilt surged through her. She reached out toward the figures, wanting to explain, to apologize, but the faces only turned away, disappearing into the darkness. "Why can't I do it? Why can't I fix this?" she thought, her chest tightening. The voice, soft and cold, came again. "You are the diplomat, ambassador. You understand the art of negotiation, yet you could not even bring peace to your own world. You couldn't even save them." Tears welled up in Cho's eyes, but she fought to hold them back. "I have failed, but I have to keep going. There's always a chance to make things right." She exhaled slowly, the guilt giving way to something more powerful, determination. Her resolve solidified, the faces of the lost ones now merely silent shadows. With that, they too vanished, leaving her standing alone in the vast emptiness. The pain didn't vanish, but her will to move forward did. She knew the test wasn't about erasing the past, it was about overcoming it. Dr. Patel wasn't spared from his own trial either. The image of his fractured mind, his thoughts scattered, his sanity slipping, felt like it was tearing him apart. He was drowning in a sea of his own disintegrating consciousness, his memories becoming distorted and fractured. His mind, his greatest strength, was betraying him. Patel, the voice crooned, "Your brilliance will unravel. You are nothing without your mind. What will you do when it's gone?" The whispers grew louder, drowning out his thoughts. He couldn't remember what was real anymore. Was this a dream? A nightmare? Was he even himself? But then, amid the chaos, he heard his own voice. It was small, weak at first, but it grew stronger as he clung to it. "I am not my fear. I am not my mind." The realization hit him. He didn't need to fight the madness. He needed to accept it, to understand it. His mind might fracture, his thoughts might wander, but his essence, his will, would remain whole. With that understanding, his mind slowly began to reassemble, the voices quieting. His vision cleared, and the oppressive fog in his head lifted. The trio of leaders, battered by their trials but standing tall in their resolve, found themselves back in the empty plain, breathing heavily but unbroken. The oppressive darkness that had clouded their minds now seemed to lift. The weight of their fears, though not entirely gone, no longer had the same power over them. The voice returned, softer now, almost approving. "You have passed the first test. You have faced yourselves. But the silent path is long. Many more trials await." The crew stood, their backs straight, their faces hard. They had won this round, but they knew, whatever awaited them next, the real battle had only just begun. The plane remained eerily silent, save for the sound of their own breathing. The vast expanse around them was devoid of all light, save the subtle, unnerving glow that seemed to pulse just out of reach, as though the darkness itself had a life of its own. The crew stood together, their bodies marked by the strain of the trials they had just endured. General Thornton's pulse still raced from the intensity of the trial. She had faced her worst fear, the image of Earth burning under her command, and yet she had held firm. She had stood her ground against the flames, the visions of defeat, and for the first time in weeks, she felt something other than dread. There was a new strength in her, a fire that refused to be extinguished. "Is it over?" Ambassador Cho's voice broke the silence, fragile but filled with quiet determination. "For now," Dr. Patel answered, glancing around at the seemingly endless expanse. "But I don't think this is the end of the test. If anything, it feels like we've only begun." The ground beneath their feet trembled once again, sending a wave of unease through the crew. The air thickened, vibrating with an energy that seemed to pulse from deep within the heart of the plane. Suddenly, the familiar voice of the watchers returned, its tone colder, more distant. "You have proven your resilience, your strength of mind," it intoned. "But now you must prove something deeper, something beyond willpower, beyond intellect." Thornton stood taller, narrowing her eyes as she faced the shifting shadows around them. "What do you want from us?" The voice's laughter echoed, a sound that reverberated deep in their bones. "What I want is not what matters. What matters is what you are willing to sacrifice." The ground began to shift again, the endless blackness folding like a living thing. Before their eyes, an enormous crystalline structure materialized, rising from the depths of the plane. Its jagged edges gleamed with an otherworldly light, casting a faint, eerie glow that seemed to mock their attempts at understanding. The structure stretched upwards, impossibly high, piercing the black sky with its sharp spires. "This," the voice continued, "is the heart of the path, the heart of your test. You must journey through it, each of you facing what you value most." The crystal began to crack, splitting open like the petals of a flower. From within, figures began to emerge, manifestations of each of the crew's deepest desires. Thornton's heart skipped a beat as a familiar face appeared before her, her daughter Sarah. She stood smiling, her eyes full of life, as if the war, the sacrifices, and the years of separation had never happened. Sarah. Thornton breathed, her voice trembling. Her daughter smiled warmly. Mom, you've always been there for me. You never gave up. Now it's your turn to live. To live without the burden of the past. Thornton's chest tightened, her mind whirling with conflicting emotions. This isn't real. It can't be real. But the feeling, the deep longing in her heart, was undeniable. She wanted to reach out to her daughter, to hold her, to make up for lost time. You are faced with a choice, the voice echoed again. Sacrifice this illusion, this moment of comfort, to continue on your journey. Or take it, and forfeit your purpose. The temptation was overwhelming. The idea of taking her daughter's warmth, of abandoning the pain and uncertainty of the mission, was alluring. But the memory of the trials she had already faced, her duty to Earth, her promise to her people, sharpened her focus. This isn't real. This isn't the future I fought for. With a heavy heart, General Thornton closed her eyes. I can't stay. I can't abandon them. The vision of her daughter faltered, her face shifting into something less familiar, less human, until it dissolved into the cold, heartless void. Thornton's breath caught in her throat, but she turned, her resolve firmer than ever. Ambassador Cho stepped forward as well. Her trial was no less devastating. Before her, the same vision of failure swirled, the faces of those she couldn't save, the moments she had failed in her negotiations. But there was a new figure now, a young girl, her daughter, standing in the midst of it all. You promised me peace, Mom, she whispered, her eyes brimming with sorrow. Where is it? Why couldn't you save us? Cho's heart stuttered in her chest, and she reached for the girl, desperate to make things right. I tried. The voice interrupted her, its coldness cutting deeper. You tried, but you failed. Tears filled Cho's eyes, the guilt threatening to swallow her. I can't change the past, she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. The girl's face warped, melting into the shadows, leaving Cho standing alone once more. She wiped her eyes, chest heaving as she took a deep breath. This was the trial of the heart. The Watchers wanted to see if she would cling to the past, to the memories of loss, or if she could move beyond them, and she would. She had no choice. Dr. Patel's trial was equally excruciating. His mind, already fractured in the previous trial, was now faced with visions of his own potential, untapped knowledge, scientific discoveries that could save or destroy entire species, a world where he was worshipped for his intellect. But Patel wasn't interested in adoration or fame. I've been chasing answers, he murmured, standing amidst the swirling images. But I know now that answers aren't everything. I need to be part of something more, something real. And with that, the illusion shattered. The trials had not only been tests of their strength, but of their hearts. They had faced their darkest fears, their deepest desires, and each of them had walked away, choosing their duty over their personal longings. The silence returned, heavier than before, but now they knew what it meant. The heart of the path had been passed. But what would the next trial be? They could not guess. Only the Watchers knew, and they were still waiting, watching, and judging. The air grew thick with an unsettling stillness as the heart of the trial faded into the distance. The crystal spires that had once loomed ominously over the crew were now gone, disintegrating into nothingness like smoke before a gust of wind. The plain around them was now an endless ocean of shifting fog, dense and swirling, with no clear horizon. The Watchers' presence still lingered, their cold voice echoing in their minds. You have faced the heart of your journey, the voice intoned, its words sharper now. You have proven your strength, your resolve, and your willingness to sacrifice. But there is one final test, one that will demand more than your strength or will. It will demand your trust. General Thornton felt a ripple of unease pass through her. Trust. The very word seemed like a threat now, especially after everything they had endured. But she forced herself to focus. They had come too far to falter now. Trust? Ambassador Cho asked, her voice tight. Trust in what? In who? Trust in each other, the voice answered as if it had anticipated the question. You have all faced your inner demons, but now you must face the most difficult of choices. Will you fight for one another, despite the unknowns that lie ahead? A sudden shift in the fog rippled outward, revealing a series of platforms suspended in the air. Each one was different, floating at different heights and angles. They appeared to be made of a strange, iridescent material that shimmered with a pulse of energy, almost alive. It was like nothing the crew had ever seen before, and it was clear that each platform had a purpose, a destination. This is the next step, the voice continued. You must divide yourselves among these paths. Choose who you trust to follow you into the unknown. Only by joining forces will you overcome the ultimate challenge. General Thornton's brow furrowed as she studied the floating platforms. Each seemed equally perilous, yet some seemed to lead deeper into the fog, others to a distant glowing light, and each one appeared to represent a choice, one that could lead to salvation or destruction. The crew would be separated, forced to make decisions without knowing the consequences. You're asking us to divide ourselves, Dr. Patel said, his voice tinged with uncertainty. But we've come this far as a unit. Splitting up now, how can that make sense? The Watcher's voice answered in a tone that sent a chill down their spines. Only by trusting each other and trusting the unknown can you hope to reach the end of this journey. The path will be harder, the challenges greater. But if you unite your will, if you place your faith in each other's strength, the path will open before you. A hush fell over the crew. They all knew what this meant. The true test of leadership of unity was here. The Watchers were not asking for obedience. They were asking for something far harder, faith. Faith in one another, faith that they would make it through whatever lay ahead. Each of them had faced trials alone, but now they had to choose to stand together, to trust that their bond could overcome the unknown forces that awaited them. Thornton felt the weight of the decision. Her instincts screamed for caution. Splitting up now felt like a mistake, but deep down, she understood. The Watchers weren't forcing them to divide. They were challenging them to make a choice about what truly mattered, the future of humanity or the safety of each individual. I trust you all, she said, her voice steady but full of conviction. We've made it this far together. We can't stop now. We move forward, together. Cho nodded, her face solemn but resolute. We move as one. We don't let fear drive us apart. Dr. Patel glanced at his fellow crew members, his face set in determination. We must trust the unknown. Trust that we can do this, no matter how difficult. With that, the crew stepped forward, choosing their paths not as individuals but as a unit. They understood the weight of the choice, and though the fog still swirled around them, it no longer felt like an obstacle. It felt like a passage, a step toward the next challenge. The true test of their journey had just begun. As they moved forward, the platforms shifted, moving in alignment with their steps. Each crew member felt an odd sensation of being pulled forward, a deep inner knowing that they were moving in the right direction. It was as though the universe itself was aligning with their decisions, guiding them forward. But as they neared their respective platforms, the final words of the Watchers lingered in their minds. Trust in each other. Only then will you reach the end of the path. The platform beneath Thornton rose higher, the fog surrounding her thickening. She felt the familiar weight of responsibility, but also a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever lay ahead, she was not alone, and together they would face it. The platform beneath General Thornton trembled as it ascended higher into the dense fog, the light from below dimming with every passing second. The air around her felt thinner, colder, and more oppressive, as if the atmosphere itself was testing her resolve. She steadied herself, focusing on the pulsing rhythm of the platform beneath her feet, the only constant in the vast unknown. In the distance, the faint glow of other platforms began to flicker like distant stars, signaling the paths chosen by her crew. She had chosen the path of leadership, knowing full well that their unity had always been their greatest strength. The Watchers had tested their individual will, but now they faced the greatest challenge yet, the unknown and the ultimate price of their decisions. "You are almost there," the Watcher's voice echoed through the fog, its presence no longer intrusive but oddly intimate, as if the very fabric of space was listening in. Thornton's pulse quickened. "Almost there? What does that mean?" The voice answered with a cold laugh, devoid of malice, but laden with mystery. "You have walked the path of sacrifice, of trust, and of will. Now you must face the final truth of your journey." Ahead, the fog began to part, revealing a colossal structure rising out of the mist, a tower that pierced the sky, its surface shimmering with an ethereal energy. It was no longer just a symbol of the trials they had endured. It was the culmination of their choices, of everything they had fought for. Thornton's heart beat faster as she approached the tower. She could feel the weight of the crew's sacrifice, their trust in her, and the sense of purpose that had guided them this far. As her platform neared the base of the tower, a force pulled her inward, a magnetic pull that drew her toward the entrance, its doors slowly sliding open with a resonating hum. Inside, the tower was both simple and overwhelming, vast yet intimate. The walls pulsed with the same energy that had surrounded them throughout the trials, a constant reminder of the Watcher's presence. But it wasn't the walls that drew her attention, it was the figure waiting at the center of the chamber. A tall, imposing figure cloaked in darkness stood at the heart of the tower, a silhouette that seemed both human and something beyond human. The air around it hummed with ancient power, and Thornton could feel its gaze before she saw its eyes. "You have come far," the figure's voice resonated, deep and rich with authority. "You have proven yourselves worthy of this moment. But now you must decide. Will you ascend to the stars, or will you fall into the void?" Thornton's breath caught in her chest. "What do you mean by that?" The figure took a step forward, and the air seemed to shift with it, as if reality itself was bending under its influence. "The path you've walked is not one of certainty. You have made choices that will ripple across time. The future of Earth, of all that you know, rests in your hands. But the cost of your choices may be higher than you can imagine." Behind Thornton, she could sense the presence of her crew, their platforms slowly aligning around the tower, each one entering the chamber. Cho Patel and the others stood together, eyes wide with uncertainty and awe. "You are not alone in this decision," the figure continued. "You have earned the right to decide, but what you choose now will shape the destiny of all. You may choose to stand together, as you have, but there will be no easy answers, only the truth of your hearts." General Thornton stepped forward, feeling the weight of her crew's gaze. She glanced at Cho Patel and the others, her comrades, her fellow leaders, the people she trusted above all else. In their eyes, she saw the same question reflected back at her. What would they sacrifice to ensure humanity's future? The figure's eyes flickered with an ancient knowledge. "It is time." Thornton's heart pounded in her chest, but her voice remained steady as she faced the final decision. "We've already made our choice. We stand together, united. We move forward, no matter what." The figure nodded slowly, its eyes glimmering with something akin to approval. "Then you shall ascend. But remember, the stars are not without their shadows." As the chamber began to pulse with an overwhelming force, the entire structure trembled. The walls hummed with an otherworldly energy, and the platforms around them shifted, pulling them all toward the center of the tower. A blinding light enveloped them, and for a moment, it felt as though time itself had stopped. In that instant, Thornton understood. They weren't just reaching for the stars. They were becoming part of something greater, something beyond their comprehension. The Watchers had led them to this moment, but the final path they would walk was theirs to choose. The price of their unity was steep, but the reward would echo across the cosmos. Together, they had faced the unknown and emerged stronger. Together, they would face the future, whatever it held. And with that, the light swallowed them whole, and the tower rose, carrying them toward the stars.